Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early lights what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes
Ko kore peke uhufanga I he ngai talafa papa katoa peku os whai ate pia mi he paenga o he wake tari whalau I he aho whakakoloa koe ni. Kai ata mua a moau ki u whahoko atu ai proklama mi he Piwai Provo Substation ko ia ai paenga o he wake tari whalau. Pea kore peke uhufanga mawai pe I he talamalu o he whanua. Pea ki moa pea kamata e tau poloklama ki he whiawhini ko kore ki tau tuku moa a he whakamalo maalunga taha o ku lava ki tau mau ki he tamai hewani ko ia ko ne whakakoloa aki koe pea moau a he fuu aho whakakoloa koe ni pea I he ene pehe ko e tau wa usia a he aho koe ni mātuunga mi he ofa ta e whiriwhiri mānako a he tamai hewani kai ko harerei na tau whai. Pea I hene pehe, o tuku mawai pe a whakamalo maalunga taha o lava ki tau mau ki a teia, ko iha koe tau ausia ai ahoni. Pea, oku whiawhia mawai pe a motoa whaiwhatungia, o lave I he motoa whaiwhatungia oku la koe whialerei mawai pe a ne awhiwhio, ai tamatui, tau whahara tu po wono, kau maa whoki ai tahine kuini na nasi pau utuku aho, pea moe whare o haa moe o fo. Pea whiawhia u lau maria le rei pea hou eiki, moe haa mata pure, kau maa whoki aki mou tolu kotoa pe, ai ka inga tonga kotoa pe u mea mai ki he pahenga o he wake tari whalau I he ngalu ea, pe ko I ngalu o pe. Pea I hene pehe kai tari whiawhia ki mou tolu I he loto hanga maarie I he whiawhi whakakoloa koe ni. Pea whiawhia maoi pe ke taitari rea I pe ki mou tolu me ngai whanua o Iulope, Francais, Itali, Sweteni, ka mawhokia Austria pea me ngahi whanua kehe o Iulope, aia o kumo mea mai pea me iai. Tu whoki ha whamalo kia te ginau tolu kunau mea mai pea me he ai whanua koia o Asia, me Siaina, pea me iai ki Taiwan, pea me Taiwan ki Tokyo, Malaysia, kau mawhokia Singapore, mga hi wheitu kehe, mui whanua kehe I Asia, Tautau te whito kia teki motolo mo mea mai mi he the land of the rising sun. Pea mi si apani, mi Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, Kaumafoki a Kyushu. Ai au kui ai prefecture ko ia o Fukuoka, pea mo Okinawa. Tai tari whiawhia ki motolo ki he paenga o he wāke tari whalau, pea mi he substation ko eni, ai oku o atu a ngai polokalama i loa whikau aki moe lofa talamatangi i he ako, pe koe mo uile rei. Pe koe ngahi u mea o whikau aki moe ako pe mo uile rei. Tai tari whiawhia i pea ki motolo ku mo mea mai mi he whanua o i kare, mi ngahi state ko ia e nimanoa o i kare, o e i kare. Pea whiawhia ma o e pe ke tai tari whiawhia ki motolo, pea lawe i he motu a whai whatungia, koe taimi, whaingata aeni koe uhigo taimieni o ku whakataha mai e whamiri, ke he kari loa ko ia o ono pōni, aia koe tau te pire, mau mea toko ni, whai ai e talanoa, mo e wahe wahe, pea kātoa ki ai e whamiri. Pea kai ke ngāloa ki mongtolu, mō kau mai pea me ngahi territories ko ia o e i kare, hangi ko ia ko Guam, ko Haamoa, ai au kui ai e tau malu i whanua a Amerika. Pea tōlahi whoki o e tau whanau tonga o kuna tau malu i whanua a Amerika i Haamoa, kauma whoki a Guam. Pea ki montolo ko ia aku mō mea mai pea me ngahi u territories kehe o Amerika, tai rea ki montolo heni ki he pahenga o he wāke tari whalau, i he aha whakakoloa ko eni. Pea taitari whiawhia i pea ki motolo, o ku mō mea mai pea mi Talentown anta, mi Australia, mahalo ai ngawelahi pea mi hena, pea tatau e pea mo ki motolo, pea mi he the land of the long white clouds, pea mi Aotearoa Nuusila, o whātu ki a mō ngai whawhonga, pea mahalo ai ngawelahi pea mi hena. Taitari whiawhia i pea ki motolo, o ku mō mea mai mi Tonga Eiki, Kaumafoki a Fisi, o whaati kia teki motolo pia whakatawange o kulerei e mea katoa pe i Tonga Eiki. Ho Eiki mo e hamata pure. Tumoa ke taitaile rea ki motolo e siari i ongi pia ka hiri ko e patau whoki mai rewa o kamata. Ai ngai mea kuloto ke wahe kia teki motolo i he ahoni. Malo.
They say, malo lele. In Fiji they say, pura vinaka. In Samoa they say, talo falava. In New Zealand they say, kiora oe. In Hawaii they say, aloha oe. But in America, a happy day. Fia maupe. In Tonga they say, malo lele. In Fiji they say, pura vinaka. In Samoa they say, talo falava. In New Zealand they say, kiora oe. In Hawaii they say, aloha oe. But in America, the happy day. Fia maupe. Te vai na tahiti, whakalawe tāra oe, alomi e. Aue, te vai na tahiti, whakalawe tāra oe, alomi e. Tahiti nui a te whare aue, tauga e rea. Mama, ia te uri aue, pea te urua.
Whamalo pito ho eki mo e haamata pule mo tuku taimi ka mo mea mai ki he paenga o e wāke tariwhalau I he aho whakakoloani. Pea koe polokalama o e weekendi, aia koe weekendi maeni o kai ke aha polokalama tupau I he weekendi, ka koe hanga e polokalama o e aho ni o kupeheni. I he hoko e hono tau noa te tau kolosi ai ki he Prime Labs pia me Utah, o koe e ngahi ongongone rei, pia me ngahi mea e lava o tokoni, kia te koe ki ho mo uile rei. Ulua ki a konoa, e hoa honoa, e lava ke whai ha whepotano aki ai pia mo Dr. Thomas Halaki, aia koe tonga eni, ka koe pālangi. I he hoko whukeni ko e professor I he University ko ia o Kansas, pia hoko ai ko tare kita o e Mass Communications, pia mangai mea pehe, pia he ne whoki mai ko ia pia me Kansas ki Utani, pia kune whakaamu ke lava o tokoni lahi ki o tau kakai. I he tonaki kua o si, na lava ke whai polo kalama tuai Dr. Halaki pia mo e tapo me sisters I ngai whehu ina nau whaamu ke eki ke Dr. Halaki e ngai mea whakaako kauma awhoki ngai mea o kloto a Dr. Halaki ke vahe. Pia I he ahoni e whai ha whepo tanoa aki ki he ngai mea ko ia ka whakalahi pe ki he ngai mea lava tokoni ko ihui ke oua na nofo e tau whanau pia mihea ko te kei ke mao e nau ngai tipiloma. Pe ko ia iloa ko e drop out. Pia okutaka iloa ia I Nusila, Australia mo tonga ko e school early leavers. Ka tau ngau aki pe ai drop out uhi oku mahino ngofua, pia oku ikai ko hatu hifo o ki nau tolu, ne nau nofo mihea ko te kei ke mao ko ia ha nau ngai tipiloma. He koe kau he lea dropouts he lea o ku mahu inga ke te au. Kai ke ngata pe he ku osene tau tolu ngofulo ene e ku whai e ngai tokoni ta e totongi. Ke teki nau tolu ko ia o dropouts ke nau toe foki o graduate pe koe mau ai GET ai au iloa ko I heni. Pea I kaia ko ia pe ho eki mo e haamata pule ka kou hau me whamili na e hoko ai paloparema ko ia o e nofo mihea ko te kei mau ko ia ha tipiloma. Pea oku I kai ko e tuhifo o ki nau tolu na nau nofo ka kohono hangi ko e ai ha mama ke hulu I ke toi mamange ai ngahi umea ku hoko ko ia I he drop out, he koe palopare malahi whakauria. Koe pia kai koha palopare ma e lava peha tokataha o ikonai, ko pau ke tau ngau e whakakatoa ki ai. Ko laulau hoa e ku autakai holo I ngai wheituu, pia sōmua te ki ngai wheituu I Amerikani, ko hiko nau fuwhie mau ai tokoni, ki he dropouts ko ia ai te whanau provincia, kai tautau te whito ki he tonga. Pea hange ko ia aneafi, whawhitu taki mai ha apiako aneafi. Whaeng mua ha tokoni ko hiko e whanau tonga, oku lava ke nau ngāwe mo ki nau tolu ka oku hange, oku whaingata, ai ngāwe mo ki nau tolu. Whiawhia mao ai pe e motu a whai whatongia, I kai ko e kumi ha ku ngeia, ka koe fie tokoni, he ao ngange tokoni. Koe hiri ko ia e tau mawahe atu me he mama koe ni ke he mama ka hau. Ko tui koe mea ku mahu inga, koe ha ho tokoni na e whai ka teki nau tolu. Aia na nau nofo te ki ai ko ia ke mao nau tipiloma. Koe ngāwe ia oku aonga. Pea o hange ko ia ko e kulawe ho eki mo e hamta apure. Ai whebota no aki pia mo e pure ako koe ni, ha mahino mai ai ofa ai pure ako I he whanau tonga, ka oku hange oku kaike lava ai whanau tonga mo e mātua koe ni, o sio ke whainga re volo ko ia, whi mau ko ia ke iai e nau whanau. ke pea koe aia koe konga e honoa. Konga hono tolu, kau mai, whoki mai e tōua koni, ke moe atu furiwai, pea me he mahalo ukulata e tangata, pea me hala manga ono. Kau maa whoki ai makako walu, pea whamalo ke teki moutou, ne moutokoni mai i he poloklama ko ia hono wiki honoa. Nei lahi e ngahi u tā, ko e taumua ai poloklama ko ia toi hoko a ke moe atu furiwai. Whiu matou he kumiha ngahi tā e mau whanga kui, oku i kai ke mau. Pea ko tia uku hai pea whahi ngau nau mau, kau kai ke nau fie wahe ki nau tolu. O ko ki fo i whakapona ko iau tonu ke whai mo toko. Wahe he ukai ke aonga hono tanu mia ai ngahi u mea koe ni. He ku aonga, ho eki mo haa mata pure. Ngahi u tā ko ia mo whanga kui, mo e whamiri. Tā naki ke lawa o ngawe aki, ke sio kia e tau whanau, ka oa te nau whanongo peki ke hingoa, kai ke nau sio kia lai tā. I he houai au no tolu, pe mō kou kore pe ho eki mo e hamata apure ke mō ka takwhaka more mō eki pe mua, kai wahe atu e tau polokalama, pe koe share te tau polokalama. Pea tuke tuku atu haki fo i whasi heni, pea tau toki hoko atu, malo.
Tala o Hawaii whakalata ai ula, iwa ene wanaiki, koe whani fo ana, o e whili mai, isa hokaloko, fiela kai taimi, ka kuori taula, ai ofa alomini, ve'e hei lala, koha ini se nisi, vete ke naisi, ata mai kua fihi, sai pesi i tonga, si ueni o Pasifiki, sai pesi i tonga, si ueni o Pasifiki.
Whamalo pita ho eki mo e hamata pule a mutu taimika e mo mea mai ki he paenga o he wāke tariwhakau i he aha whakakoloa koe ni. Pea koe whoki no pe ko hi koe taimi ki he paloparema ko ia o e drop out pe ko e early leavers ka pau ke mea mai me Nusila pe ko Australia. Koe mo ui ko ia a e whanau ko ia ka pau o ku drop out ai mātua. Pea ko kore whamore heni, whakatawange pe o kui kai ko ha whakatupu loto mamahi. Koe uhi na aku tupu tonu i he whainga ātakai koe ni. Pea o ta tonu maupe ke a koi maupe ai whanau ke nau loto taha, loto lahi, loto toa, pea loto tō. Neongo ai tupu hake pea to tonu e whainga taa koe ni. He koe taim kou whai homo i kau te loto ke whai haki to koni. Pea koe uhi o ku ngāwe mau pea tangata eiki, ngāwe ua i he taime ni, ai ngai whamile ni, ko ngāwe moki nau tolu. Pea ku te mau rewa ai ongo loto ofa i a kita. Koe te sio ke whainga taa ia. Pea o to tonu ke tau wako i e tau whanau, mo e whanga moko puna, whanga manga puna, ke nau mao e whainga loto ko ia. Ka bau nau sio ke nau kui o ku whainga taha ia, ngau e ua pe tolu, koe uhi ke lava o to tongi ai pila. Pea o to tonu ke nau o ako. Oho he ako, hain koe lau ko ia ai mātua. Ko ne punou pe koe ai ulu i he lotu hoko tai pe moe ako ka te toki abe ke olunga manawa koe taimia ko o kwhai ai graduation pia mi he ngai le volo kehe o ako. Ko whiga o luaki pe koe rewa ai ngahi whaunga ho eiki mai haamata apure i he tau ki montolu ko ia o tolahe ki montolu i Amerikani. O ku where mo whawhua ngai whaunga ke lava o toi mau ai ngahi tipiloma koe ni. Pea ko kamata i tonga eiki, ai kamata o whaaui, pe taka he taimi ni koe drop back in. Drop out, pe toi drop mai peki loto. Ke mau hanau ngahi tipiloma, pe koe tatau, pe koe ikiuren o e tipiloma. Ko ki nau tolu ko ia o ku nau drop out i koe wahe koe whaka ofa atu. Pea koe socio-economic whaofa au pito. I he whonuani. Pea ko usio mata to tonu i he ngai whakaofa koe ni. Pea koe uhinga ia o kwhai ai ai tokoni. Koe uhinga ia o kwhai ai ai tokoni ta e eke ha totongi. Ho eki moe haamata pule. He o ku mohutapo i kinange ke te whaki. Ha te mau mai ha te mea. Pero pau, e lava peha fo i toko taha, pe fo i toko ua, o whoki mai, o mau e nau ngahi i kiuren koe o e tipiloma, pe aku tō hatu rewa i ngā ueia. He lava he tō taha ko ia, o whakarerei i hono whaamiri, whakamokopuna, whakamakapuna, o aua i pe a ngai funga waka, pe mo ngai society ko ia, pe koe community ko ia o kumo me ai. Ko hono mo o ni ia. Pea talu I kamata ai puna ai lofa talamatangi pea me he paenga e wā ke tari whalau. Me he wāwhe taha nima. Koe wāwhe wō waini. Ok, puna pea ai lofa tala hono masani, pea tala ai matangi ko ia ku hau ki he mea whakaako pe koe mo uirerei. Koe mohanga reo whakatonga I koe ngai polo kalama ko tawa pe u atu me he paenga o he wāke tari whalau, me he substation koe ni, koe whakatau te whito ki he mo uirerei, kau maa whoki ai ako. O atu ai ngahi u interview kehe, o atu pea wahe, mohani I kehe, ko osi o mai pea toi o mai ke lava o tokoni ka tek tau tolu. He kai ke tau nofo hafo I koloseti. O tau nofo I ngai community ke ngai he ko mafola e tonga. Koe uhinga ia o e pea mo e tau mua e paenga o e wāke tari whalau ke whakatataha I e tonga ngai tapa ke o e kolope ke whai ha whetokoni aki. Pea kai ke whai ha whesio whaki ka koe whetokoni aki. Ka waha mea o kurerei wahe. Ka mea e aonga ki hataha wahe moia. Hena I kai teke mao e mea ko ia ata pe na e wahe atu ia hataha. Pena ke ako moha ni hike. Ko iai e ho iki mo e hamta pure. Ko e momini pe hu mai Chris Rhodes, ka maa whoki ai manager ko ia ai Prime Labs, pe tau kolosi lewa ki ai. He kohono mahu inga o e repi koe ni o ku where mo whafo e nau ngahi u mea pea ku nau toe expand ma o pe. Hangi ko e mea na wahe atu ki mo a. Ngai e toko taha ia ku whio e kau toke taha no whenga e piko whekoa ai tausi koe e rei. Pea koe lahi ai ngahi u mea peheni o ku hiko o insiwa, pea ko ki mo tolu ko ia ku mo insiwa pea me he pure anga Amerika, o ku nau kau ia he request he toke tā, kono osi koe hono sivi koe he Prime Labs o atu ko ia aiola. Si o rewa e toke tā, ki he whaunga to tonu ko ia u tonu ke whai ki ai o atu ko ia ai dosage. Pe koe medication ko o atu o kui kai ke sai ke te koe ka uaha medication ke. Pea koe ngahi mea ni aku lahi, pea kau ai Prime Labs he ngāo e whakawha ofa na nau whai. Hangarewa he toki tā liu ai medication, kai ke ngata pehe kai ke ha side effects, ka toi fia ai ka inga koni. Kaupālangi, pea African Americans, Native Americans, Polynesian, pea go ilo, ai ka kai tonga o ku nau mao. Pea whainga ke nau mea mai o wahe heni ano aonga ko ia hanga he nau toke tā o ngāwe whakataha mui Prime Labs. Pea kainga o ku kono uhinga e koe lahi o ki tau tolo ku tau pehepe tau e whānoa ki olunga. Pea o ku kamata rewa ki unu mai a natula ki ngahi konga kehe o sino. Pea tonu pe ke tau to e poto angi. O hiu tau nofo I he whanua tu ki mua o e ngahi whakatotolo whakasai nisi kama afo ki ngahi whaunga treatment. Pea I hene pehe o ku whiawhia mao pe ke o maia ki nau tolu o ku nau mao ai whahinga capability koe ni ke lava o wahe atu mo ki mau tolu. Kai ke ku toa mai ni ai totaha ki loto.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Perhaps we'll wait for Chris, if Chris is going to join us.
Yeah, either way works for me. I'm happy to hang tight.
Okay. So just hang tight until Chris shows up.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you. Aia koe totaha ni koe ko hoko mau pe ai taimi koe o tai ho toki tā ai ngahi u tesi koe ni pea o ku nau hangarewa o whai ngahi tesi koe ngahi u mi sini tuu ki mu aeni o māmani he taini mi ulahe o no ngāwe aki ngahi repi koe ni pea o ku maa pea affordable pea ngāwe aki ngahi u insure koe ia tō lahe o ki tau tolu o ku iai e ngahi u insiua peheni. Pea tahania kau taha o whinga i ke lava toa te ki tonga eiki, he toi re reiangi, kai ke toi ave e ngahi u sample kehe ki New Zealand mo Australia kai whai hanga tonu pe ngahi mea koe nipe mi tonga eiki. O hi he kunau expand ma pe ki nau tolu, pe e tokoni ki he kau toke tāko ia i tonga. Whae nau tolu tolahi au pita ngahi siwi ki he COVID-19, pe mo ngahi u mea pehe i he time tatau. Kaike, koe ma pe hu mai ai tō taha ko ia o ku hoko koe marketing manager. Mahalo sai ke tau kamatai au tau tolu mo en, ke ne wahe ai ngai u mea ke en. Do you mind if we get started and then when Chris shows up?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm happy to take it.
Okay.
Go.
Can you introduce yourself and what you do there in Prime Labs? Thank you.
Sure. I can absolutely do that. Let me know whenever you'd like me to start.
Yeah, go ahead and start.
Okay, so I'm Annie. I'm the laboratory supervisor for Prime Labs. I've got a master's degree in DNA and serology, and they hired me on to expand some of their services at Prime Labs. So I oversee all their infectious disease DNA testing and the expansion of their services into blood and possibly toxicology.
Awesome. Are you from Utah and or from out of state?
Both. So I was born in Utah, but I moved out of Utah about 10 years ago. So I just moved back. I've been living on a farm in Wyoming. So living a slow life.
Okay. Wyoming. Does your family has a farm in Wyoming?
No, it was just me. My family's here, so my parents are local to the Salt Lake area.
Oh, so you just coming home.
Mm-hmm. Yep, just coming home.
Great to hear. Can you share what your daily routine looks like?
Mine personally or Prime Labs?
The Prime Labs.
Yeah, so we typically open up at about 8. We have a couple staff members there that will go through any specimens that were received in the Dropbox overnight. Accession everything from FedEx or UPS that gets shipped to us, which basically means bringing the specimens into the lab and giving them a unique tracking number so we can have a chain of custody for each specimen as it goes through the laboratory processes. And we'll usually begin a COVID run in the morning if we need to get some community COVIDs done while we're wrapping those up. And then we'll typically run anywhere between 50 to a couple hundred specimens a day. And that will be in the molecular department. So we do infectious disease testing for the genetics specific to each pathogen. We look for about 200 different pathogens, and we look for the genes associated with each. So it's a pretty accurate test compared to what's out there in the industry right now. It's about 99% accurate, so long as the specimen's handled appropriately and collected appropriately.
Okay, so I think that's something very important on that part when you say that it comes FedEx or UPS or whatever, which means that it comes from any of the 50 states of the United States, right?
Right. Absolutely. So we've created tests where the specimens can be collected with a simple swab. Let's say we do a wound test, for example, where we're looking for different pathogens that are associated with wounds, including their antibiotic resistance genes, because oftentimes wounds will have some type of pretty hardy bacterial infection, something common like MRSA, for example. It's resistant to specific antibiotics, and so it's a pretty hardy bacteria. So a clinician will swab the wound and they'll stick it in a little specimen container that's about the size of my thumb that has some viral medium fluid in it that basically will stabilize the virus, the bacteria. It doesn't need to be refrigerated. It doesn't need to be frozen. We've done plenty of stability tests to ensure that that specimen stays completely viable as it is just in the specimen medium that it's shipped to. And then it gets sent to us typically overnight via FedEx or UPS, and we'll get it tested within 24 hours of receiving it.
So what's your turnaround time, if you don't mind me asking?
We are 24 hours or less for our turnaround time.
Wow. That is pretty fast for molecular testing.
Yes, it definitely is. I think typically everyone's used to about 3 days, sometimes 5, especially with the beginning of COVID. We were seeing quite a lengthy turnaround time. And so 24 hours is something unique that, as a scientist, I've seen with Prime Labs.
So as a scientist, I understand the way that you and the others are going through. Does that mean that the lab is 24 hours?
Good question. No, it's a yes and no. It means Annie, as the scientist, will do what it takes to get it done within 24 hours. And so the reality is my job requires a lot of forward thinking and prioritizing and efficiency and basically self-accountability to make sure that I prioritize the tests according to when they come in and make sure that I get everything done within the appropriate time frame. So there have been a couple of times I've been there late at night, but typically I'm able to keep up with it, as well as our other scientists that we just brought on.
Okay. If you don't mind pausing while I share something in Tongan for the audience. Hoi ki mo e hamata pule mo mea ton pe kia en whikau aki pia mo e sivi ko ni hoa wafa. Kauenia I he vave au pito mo mantu I ko e ukai ko mea pe tahaka o kulahi a ngai mea o kufai kai hono sivi. Pea oku comprehensive. Ai aga time ko foki atuai a result ki o toketa. Pea oku mahino lewa ai tuunga ko ia. E kuai e taime ni hia ku tō lalo e ngahi vitamini ma ngahi mea pehe. Ka oku lava e ngahi sivi ko toa pe o tala a ngahi tuunga ko ia. Pea oku hoko le vai e koe taime ko whare lei e he toketa e ne diagnosis pea mo recommendation ko ia ki ngahi fo ia kau. Pega e hape o ku o atu ia whika o aki pea makatuunga e ngai sivi ko e ni. Fu mahu inga au pito. And if you don't mind me, so you said COVID testing. If you don't mind, what are the types of testing that you guys do in the lab, in Prime Labs?
Sure. So we do primarily, we do about 6 different pathogens, or pathogen panels, I should say, excuse me. So instead of doing a single molecular test for a single target, we look for anywhere between 24 to 48 targets at once. So we'll do a full respiratory pathogen panel, for example, that will look for the genetics associated to both viruses and bacteria at the same time. We'll do fungal for a lot of toenails for geriatric patients, for example, or podiatry clients. We'll do some fungal, which looks at mold, yeast, mites, fungus. We do UTI. We do a women's health panel. We also do an STI panel. And I believe that covers it. We do 6 different panels.
Yeah, so we do men's health too panel, right?
We do a women's health that'll focus on some bacterial infections that are common to women as well as STIs. And so and the UTI will also associate with men when it comes to the molecular pathogens. Okay.
Do you do any, there was a couple of people that asked me at lunchtime, do you do anything with testosterone testing?
That is something that's actually why they hired me on at Prime Labs as well, was to expand their services into blood. And so blood is our blood lab's getting ready to open up. I'm finishing up some validation studies, and testosterone will be one of the assays that I'll be testing for in the blood.
Okay, awesome. That's great news.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
excited.
Yeah, then you should be. You guys doing a great job of helping the doctors and patients as well. Okay, is there any? Can you share a case where the testing from Prime Labs was able to help the doctor in order to make the right diagnosis and the medication or dosage or anything related to that?
Sure. We see it pretty much every day, it seems. So, one of the tests we do, for example, we had a patient who was pretty much at the end of her rope with frustration. She was really sick for weeks with a pretty high fever, some severe pains going on in her back and her abdomen. And she had been to urgent care numerous times. She'd been to the emergency room numerous times. And she ultimately contacted Prime Labs asking for some type of help, hearing that we have some unique services. And so we had coordinated, after I spoke with her, kind of got an idea of what was going on. I had come up to the conclusion that she had some type of either UTI or GI pathogen going on. Something was going on in her system. So we did perform a UTI pathogen panel on her, and we were able to detect a specific type of bacteria. In fact, it was, if I recall, an E. coli infection was among one of them, but it was a specific type of bacteria in her urine that was missed on the culture and sensitivities that were performed on 2 different occasions at the emergency room for her. And while we did that bacteria test, we also were able to do the antibiotic resistance genes for the pathogens, the bacteria that were detected. And we were able to guide the doctors in getting her the right medication and the right dosage. This woman had been tested, her urine's been tested before, and she had been given antibiotics prior to this, but none of them were specific to the bacteria infection she had, and it was a resistant strain. And so after everything was said and done, and after the test was performed and the information was given to the doctor, within 24 hours, she was able to start getting to a point where she was feeling better and the infection was able to get cleared up.
Wow. So pause for a second here, if you don't mind. Hoik mo e hamta pule mo ko e mea gana toki vahe ko ia en o mahu inga. Aia ko e tōtaha ia ko e nina e tautou sivi pia alat ko e ke emergency room ia o ku kaike lava e nau sivi ko nau tolu he ko e emergency room o ku i kaike fu sophisticated fe. Pia I hene pehe u kaike lava he toki tā o oange ai right diagnosis pa mo medication. Pia I hono hiri ko ia hono o mai ai ngai u specimens pe ko e toto na e to'o ko e miai pia CV. I lo I lewa ta ko e bacteria kehe ia aia ulotonga whaingata iai ai whewhine ko e ni. Pia o atu he toki tā ia ai medication kehe. Pea I no o atu ko ia ai ola ko ia o e CV ko ni mantu ukai pe ko e bacteria pe ka unau to e stesi ki he ngahi u mea whikau aki mo e genes ko mea ia mahu inga ko e molecular ia o ku kaike fu common I ngahi u lepi ko e ngau toki tā ko ia uku ke mea ko I ki ai pea I he mau ko ia e ola tal lewa he toki tā liliu ai medication pea kamata lewa ke foki mai ai mo uilelei ki he whewhine koe ni. Koe tahaia o ngahi u example. Ka he tuku e taimi ki tau foki pika en. And thank you for sharing that example and appreciate you sharing it. And so what are other things that you do? I know you said there are different panels. Are there anything related to diabetes or high blood pressure or high cholesterol? Any of those will be great to share. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, good question. So that's part of the validation studies I'm doing right now with our blood services. It hasn't launched yet, but it will within about 2 to 3 weeks is the goal. And we will be doing, I've designed a couple different panels, one specifically to focus on male wellness and male health. Another to focus on female wellness and female health, something specific to cardiac and organ functions, and another to be used with admissions or intakes for geriatrics, for example, getting admitted into long-term care facilities, rehabilitation clinics, or any other type of clinical setting where they need to do kind of a baseline testing to admit a patient when it comes to that. So we will be doing lipids, your cholesterols. It's your basic lab work for blood, but then a little bit more specialized. The way that I focus on the blood work and designed them as a DNA scientist, I like the small, right? I focus on the small, the minuscule, the stuff that people really forget about on a molecular level or a cellular level. And so while we focus on the cholesterol, and that's a great test, let's look additionally at the proteins that help you metabolize your cholesterol to make sure that all systems are working copacetically. So it'll be a little bit beefier than what we're used to.
Wow. So how does a girl born in Utah and went to Wyoming and back to Utah, where you get your education from, if you don't mind sharing, because it is a very specialized field, as we all know. So if you don't mind sharing, that would be great.
Sure. So I got my bachelor and associate's degree from Weber State University, just in Ogden. I started out in forensic science doing human DNA testing at crime scenes. And just kind of by happenstance, I shifted into clinical DNA testing for pathogens and ended up getting my master's degree in the study of DNA from the University of Florida. Graduated from honors, top of my class. Really enjoyed that and really enjoyed the clinical aspect. It's a lot less stressful than forensic science. That will stay with you for a bit, whereas clinical science isn't as hard, I should say, to handle. So both in Utah and in Florida is where the education came from.
So after you got your education in Florida, you decided to come back to Utah, or you went from there to Wyoming?
So the program I did was hybrid. So I was living in Wyoming, and in order to get the master's degree, I had to have some experience in a laboratory as well. And I had to have experience in DNA and PCR testing. And then I was able to go to Florida and back. And it, like I said, it was a hybrid program. So it was really, really easy for my schedule. But I stayed in Wyoming, and I came to Utah after Chris offered me a job here at Prime Labs. And I figured it'd be good to come back home for a little bit.
Yeah. So were you able to design your hybrid program that you only go to Florida when it's snow and cold in Wyoming?
Well, it's cold and snowy in Wyoming 9 months a year. So we have winter, and then we have a little blip of summer, and then it's winter again. So it was nice to get a break from the cold.
Wow. Okay. So were you still in Florida when Chris contacted you, or you were back in Wyoming already?
No, I was back in Wyoming. I met and got in touch with the owner of Prime Labs probably 2.5 years ago, before Prime Labs was started. He and I had somehow gotten connected. He was looking for a scientist. I was looking for a business mind, because I wanted to do a laboratory as well. And we got connected then. And Prime Labs ended up becoming a reference lab for a laboratory that I helped co-found and run in Wyoming. And that's how we ended up getting connected with each other. And then I sold my ownership in my lab in Wyoming and joined Prime Labs.
Oh, and moved back home.
Yep, moved back home, which my mother is very happy about.
I bet. and good to have you back home in Utah to help all of us and the people here. But Prime Labs, you can help anybody in the 50 states as long as it can be delivered UPS or FedEx or however method that you get to deliver them, right?
Correct. Thank you.
So that's great. So I'd like to ask, there was one of the questions that I got. So what is the process that anybody have, like, for example, do I have to request this type of testing from my doctor, have to request them, or how does that work, if you don't mind asking?
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. We have been able to create a requisition form, is what it's called. That is basically the way that a physician's going to request a laboratory order for us that's custom built for our services. And we get a signature from our physicians, basically a standing order that'll cover the tests for the patients so long as it's medically necessary for them. So the physicians will have our requisition form in hand, and as the medical necessity arises, they will submit the order to us on that form with the specimen. So it's all done at the same time.
Oh. So can a patient, let's suppose I'm a patient, then I go and see my primary physician, and I said, hey, can you guys send the samples? Can the patient talk to the doctor for the doctor to send the specimens to you guys at Prime Labs?
We'd love that. We definitely love that. So we just recommend that if a patient's interested in our services, to just have their physician contact us, and we can get the testing arranged for them. We've got our phone number. It should be listed and pretty easy to find, but if not, our phone number is 385-645-7400.
That's correct. Tapena has the phone number in there. So, okay, well, let's welcome Chris. Is here with us right now. Chris, welcome. I've been talking with Anne, and interested in what you like to share. Any additional?
Sorry for coming in late. I don't know what all you guys have gone through. I just caught the tail end of what Annie was saying.
Yeah, I think Anne has covered the, you can send any specimens from anywhere as long as it's delivered by UPS and FedEx, and it will take the lab 24 hours to return it back. And we talk about Anne was nice enough to share her educational pathways. Anne is a smart person, designed that kind of hybrid that you leave the cold Wyoming to Florida.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yep, we wrangled her in from Wyoming. She's been all over and has a ton of experience. We're really lucky to have Annie on board. She takes very good care of our patients and very good care of us. She has a lot of experience in what we do. I caught the tail end of what she was saying about the physician's orders. Kind of to back it up, we are currently we're focusing on PCR testing. Right now, it's widely accepted as the gold standard in kind of laboratory testing. The technology allows us to get results back to providers in a lot quicker turnaround time and get the proper information that providers need to treat their patients. And it's extremely accurate, 99% accurate, versus like a culturing sensitivity is only going to be about 70% accurate. So from a provider standpoint, it's a lot easier to deal with as well. There's no what they call a clean catch for certain type of specimens. It's really simple for a provider to use, really non-invasive, so to speak, from a patient standpoint. And so it's a pretty phenomenal technology. I shared a little bit last time, but we've had a few instances with people that have reached out to us that have had trouble trying to figure out what's going on with them. And they have reached out looking for some help. We're just a lab, so we can't diagnose them, but we're able to, through their provider, provide the data needed to get them properly diagnosed. The case I'm talking about specifically, there was a young lady who had a fever for 21 days straight. Correct me if I'm wrong, Annie. And she'd been into the urgent care 3 different times, and they were not able to find out what was wrong with her. And so she reached out in desperation, and with the assistance of her provider, we were able to get her the proper test and found out that she had a infection that was not showing up on the standard tests in the urgent cares. And within 24 hours of us receiving her specimen, she was able to have a prescription written out to start treating this infection, and actually was able to physically feel relief within about 48 hours of that. And so after 21 days of running a fever, she was pretty grateful. And so that's just kind of a glimpse of some of the technology we're able to offer. We would love to work more with your providers, and encourage any providers listening to reach out to us directly, and any patients to encourage their providers to reach out to us directly.
Okay. I think that's the magic, the key right there. You ask your physician in order to request that and fill up the form. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. So, because of time, do you have, Chris, last things that you like to share? And then we'll turn the time over to Anne for any last minute to share.
We have with our testing, we pride ourselves on the way our results come back and the simplicity of them. We're able to treat with specificity, and the way our results come back are very easy to read for the provider. They're actually an interactive option to them. And so I would love to be able to walk through that with anyone who has any questions at any time. They can reach out to us.
Okay, awesome. So, Anne?
I think we pretty much covered it. Thanks for letting us be on your radio show and for highlighting Prime Labs. We're pretty excited about the services we offer and the impact that we can have on the healthcare industry as well, and patients' individual happiness and quality of life. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, we appreciate Prime Labs sponsoring the Pelula Ki Mama'o program with Kingilangi. And Chris has been, I remember the first time I met Chris, it feels like that I have known him for years. So
yeah, he has that impact.
and we're working our way slowly to the kingdom of Tonga. So that way, when it's cold here, and Chris, you can say, "We'll go down to the lab in Tonga to do a inventory."
Let's go.
We'll take it.
Thank you. We appreciate you. So I'm pretty sure we'll talk again next month, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Bye. Ko ia I ho e ki pia mo e hamtapule, ko e lawaia whai ke eke atu o Anne kaumā whoki a Chris, ko pia mihe Prime Labs, pia ko e tahaini ha whainga maari e kia tek tau tolu ke tau ngau e whakataha mo e Prime Labs, ka au whima o ke talanoa ki ho toke tā he lahi e ngahi urepi ko ia o whaafai ko e nau ngau e he office pe ko e toke tā. Ko e pawapare ma o ku kaike nau whaalawa o diagnose to tonu ai ngahi u mea ko ia o ku hoko. Sai. Kaike, tumoa ke tua taki fo I whanongonongo heni, pea ka hiri ko ia ma tau fo I whasi, pe tau foki mai o kui heni a toke tā tō masi hālaki. Kaike, ki taitari mai pe, malo.
Malo lei.
Koe whanongongo eni me pot ngā aue puri anga Amerika, kuri toka ngai kina mo ulelei ai kakai. Whakapapau I oku ke malu I hao whanau mo whamiri e whonga lele taha teke lava ai a koe huhu malu I COVID. Ko os ngahi makehe ai huhu malu I ma ailonga I whanau tau nima ki e tau tahataha. Ko e ahoni kua me te tau pe ai mau he COVID e ka kailalahi mo e longa I whanau. Kua whakapapau I whoki ko e toko nima ko toa pe o mau he COVID-19 ko e toko taha ai ko e longa I whanau. E ke lewa ki o toke tā ha whahinga whehu I whikau aki mo e huhu malu I pia kumi lewa hawheitu e anga huhu o whitaha ki a koe I e website www.vaccines.gov. Whakapapatu me pot ngau e pure anga Amerika o kuni toka ngai kina e mo uilelei a kakai piko US Department of Health and Human Services.
Pakilangi halapalani ke whare hufana Talamu aki ai fuakala ki he olita Lata I pangai wha o fua koe pue ke taingata He o whani ne whakareke si koe te ni pare
Whamalo pito hoi ki mo e hamata pule ho mo tuku taimi ka mo mea mai ki he paenga o e wāke tari whalau I he aho whakakloa koe ni pēa mo e ki pē mua ka shea te tau polokalama ko whiawhia mau peke taitari a e troua koe ni ki he polokalama pēa ko tātu alahe ma wha polokalama ki mua pēa tuku ha whakamalo kia te ia koe ne anga lerei, anga ofa ke tokoni ki he polokalama ko ia ta po mea sisters I he tōnaki ko o si. Taitari he ni toketa Tomasi Halaki. Dr. Halaki, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Yeah, koe. So we'll probably speak some Tongan and some English, right?
Maybe si pe. Ko fuosi tawe lahi ko osi ke lea whakatonga.
Ko ia. But he's still eating the food, right?
Yes, absolutely. Certainly. Never stop eating the food. Kaigi mate.
I wanna, Dr. Halaki, if you could think back to when you and I were at Uiha. Have we ever thought possible that a few years, decades, we'll be together again in this kind of program? What's your thought?
Oh, I think we had no idea. We had no idea what the future would hold for us. Those were good days. There were difficult days, but days that we learned a lot, and it brought a great amount of joy when we were able to reunite once again.
Yeah, it's always been a joy to be with you. I learned a lot from you during our mission time. Still remember the little hut that we live in. Those were good old days.
Yes, the little hut and the little kerosene lamps that we would study by out in the little island in the ocean.
Yeah. So, well, it's good to be with you again, Pro, and we'll get together here pretty soon. But you also gave me a PowerPoint concerning dropouts and things like that. But your interest in education is not just dropouts. I wonder if you can share what are the big things that you worry about, and then I'll load the PowerPoint in to accompany you while you want to share the things that you wanted to. Thank you.
Oh, good. Well, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about dropouts, and that's certainly a concern among any group, any student. And to those students who are struggling in school right now, I want to share some statistics. And I think this is important as we look forward in hopes of a great future. We each want a great future for ourselves. And just like you and I, when we had no idea what our future would hold as we were on that tiny island of Uiha, I think that's the same thing many of our youth feel today. They have no idea what the future holds for them, and they see difficulties, and they have frustrations, and they want to just quit, and that's the easy thing to do. But some statistics that I'd like to share about the importance of a high school education. In the United States, according to the U.S. government, high school dropouts will earn a lifetime earning of $200,000 less than if they just finished their high school degree. And that's a pretty significant amount of money. Even more than that, high school dropouts will earn less than $1 million lower than if they had a college degree. And so I refer to a college degree as a $1 million degree. It gets you a lifetime earning of at least $1 million more than if you drop out of high school. And that is a significant amount of money over your lifetime, and it allows for a much more comfortable life. Some other things that we want to look at in terms of high school dropouts. Right now, approximately 55%, so more than half of the dropouts are male. We see that at the university level too, where fewer males are entering the university. And so we want to pay special attention to the boys out there and their education and supporting them and encouraging them. Another statistic, this one's a little bit shocking. 75% of inmates in a state prison are high school dropouts.
Wow.
And so that tells you a little bit about the likelihood of what your life may look like in the future as a high school dropout. And so, nobody wants to have a goal of spending their life in prison. And so the best way to prevent that is to continue your education. And one last statistic that I'll share is the death rate of those that have fewer than 12 years of education or a high school level education. Their death rate is 2.5 times higher than those with at least 1 year of college. So, staying in school can impact your health, it can impact your freedom, and it can certainly impact your lifelong income. So all good reasons to stay in school.
Okay. So I'm looking at you and I because we're probably on left and right side of the spectrum, right? So I come from a family, my father was a dropout, and I can testify to the hardship that we went through, okay? And you come from a family, your father was a university professor. And so we basically have two different sides of the spectrum here. So what are the things in your mind that helps you, motivate you to go for more education?
So I will tell you, when I was in high school, I was a very poor student. I was not motivated in my classes. I was not making connections, I think is really what was going on. I always knew that I needed to go on to college because I felt like that was the way that I would be able to financially support my family. And so that was always in the back of my head, but I wasn't excited about going to school, and I wasn't excited about doing my homework. I think my high school graduating GPA was something like a 1.62. That's very poor. But as I mentioned, always in the back of my head, I felt that going to college was the way that I was going to be able to provide for my family. And I think I took it for granted, maybe the ability to get into college, but I struggled. I had to do things that were hard to bring up my GPA and to make it acceptable. My grades didn't change dramatically in college, and when I wanted to go back and get a master's degree, I struggled to get accepted because my grades had been so poor earlier on. And the schools that I really wanted to get into didn't look at me, didn't consider me. And so I accepted an offer to a lesser school. So looking back on my own experience, I should have focused more. There's a lot of things I should have done differently with my education. My sisters, ironically, my two sisters who were much better students in high school have never finished college. Neither one of them have a college degree. But both of my parents always were encouraging and supportive of education. My father, as you mentioned, was a PhD and a university professor for his career. My mother got a college degree and some post-college training. And then later in life, she went on to get her master's degree and graduated with a master's degree at 60 years old.
Wow.
Which I think is a great example of the value of education never dies. Right?
Wow. That is amazing, brother. Very amazing. What role do you think? I'm pretty sure you have gone to your dad's office, as a little kid or as a kid, and look around the office. Being a professor in an university is a big, big deal. So what role did those things play when you go visit him?
As a young boy, I don't think I truly had an appreciation for what my father was doing and for the education and the discipline that it took for him to get there. Like you, my father came from very humble means. He's an immigrant to the United States, and he was born in very humble circumstances. He was fortunate enough to have access to a good education only because his father worked at a school. But I don't think I ever felt the impact of that as I visited my dad at his office. There were some fun things that we did together. I remember as a very young boy, my dad would grade tests. He would grade exams through these old punch cards. Maybe some folks in your audience have seen these. And he would have this great big machine. It was a computer, but it was probably the size of a refrigerator. That he would take me down in the basement of his building, and I would help him put these punch cards through this big, this big machine, and that's how he would grade exams. He worked in one of the historic buildings on campus, and I loved exploring around that building. And as I got older, got into high school, I felt very comfortable in that environment. That was one thing that I think that was a great benefit, is I became comfortable in the university environment. As a high school student, when I had research papers that I needed to write, I would go to the library at the university and do some research. And I became acquainted with the resources available there. That's not always the case for, pardon me, it's not always the case for students coming out of high school, especially ones who are first generation college students. They're not familiar with the surroundings, and they're not comfortable just navigating campus. And so that was a great blessing to me that I felt comfortable there. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Oh, yeah, it does. So, and you became a college professor. That's interesting.
I did. I did that by accident. As a kid, as a teenager, spending all that time on a university campus, I saw some things that I didn't like. Primarily the egos that many university professors have. And I always told myself I would not follow in my father's footsteps. And so I began my career after college, my professional career, in a field very different than where he was at, probably influenced maybe a little bit more by my mother. There was a lot of creativity. My mother was a very creative person, and she influenced me in that direction. But I had an opportunity to take a job as a high school teacher. And I took that opportunity and found that I really enjoyed teaching. I really enjoyed mentoring students and helping them to succeed. And opportunities opened their doors to me as I went on through life, and I was able to go back and get a master's degree. And then I was hired at a university with that master's degree, with the agreement that I would complete a doctoral degree. I didn't have a goal to do that, but I liked my job and I wanted to keep it. And so I agreed to go on and complete my doctoral degree while I was teaching at that university. And it's made for a great career. I've really enjoyed it. And I really enjoy seeing many of my former students and their success. Those first high school students that I taught years ago are now in a situation where they're well into their careers, starting their families, and really excelling and doing great things. And I look at them and I recognize that I had maybe a very small part, but I had a part that I played in their success. And that's what's really fulfilling to me.
Awesome. So have you go back to your to your PowerPoint about how to keep students from dropping out? I think those are very important information for our viewers and listeners worldwide. Thank you.
Yes. So there's some important things here, and I don't think that we have time to cover all of the things on here. But you said you're going to make this available to your audience on your website. So I've got several different categories of what parents can do, what high schools can do, what colleges can do, and what students can do. Each of those four groups can do different things to help stay in school. So maybe we can review the things that parents can do and the things that students themselves can do.
Okay.
Would that be a good fit for the audience?
Yeah.
So on the list of things that parents can do, number one on there is communicate. And stay in communication with your children. Talk to them even from a very early age, and make sure that they feel comfortable coming to you. I know teenage years can be really difficult, and many times there can be a lot of tension between teenagers and their parents. And it's important even during those difficult years that you keep the communication open and make sure that your kids feel comfortable coming to you with advice, talking to you about problems that they face at school or other situations, just allow them to talk openly. And then when it comes time to talk about careers, this is point number 2. Talk to them about reality about careers. When kids are young, they have big dreams, and sometimes we as parents encourage those dreams. Young boys want to be firemen or policemen, or they want to be professional athletes, things like that. And young girls, they want to be ballerinas, or they want to be, these other things, which are all great things. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. But the challenge there is so few people actually are able to pursue many of those types of careers. Right now, my wife and I are staying with her brother, and they have a son. Their oldest son is 10 years old in 4th grade, and he wants to be a professional soccer player. And he's pretty disciplined, and he practices a lot and does well. But the percentage of young people who actually get to be professional athletes are very few and far between. And so his parents recognize that, and they talk to him about options. They don't discourage him from his goal of being a soccer player, but they also say, well, there's a possibility you might not make it. So if you don't make it, what are you going to do? And I think that's so important to make sure that kids know the realities of what careers they want to have. There's a lot of professions out there that are highly, highly competitive. And so you want to have a backup plan. And as this young man that I told you about, as he gets older and gets into junior high and high school, he may find other interests and he may change his goals. The other things may come into his life that change that. They may not. He may continue to pursue that. We don't know. Going back to that question about living on the island of Weha, we had no idea what our future holds. So be prepared for anything, and so forth.
Okay.
The next point that I want to bring up about parents, make sure you don't pressure your kids too much. I think kids today are under a lot of stress. Peer pressure is something that's plays a big role in their lives, especially as they get older into their teen years. It just becomes a real challenge. So, be encouraging, be supportive, help them in their involvement with extracurricular activities, but don't put too much pressure and too much expectations on them. I think that's important.
Interesting point there, brother.
Yeah. Another point, I've got an interesting story about this next one. The next point I want to talk about is keeping in touch with the school. It's really important that parents, keep in touch with the teachers, keep in touch with the principal, attend parent-teacher conferences, do all those things. I have a friend of mine who his grandson came to live with him. His grandson was in a situation where he was struggling in school. He was not in a good environment, needed to get out of that environment, and came to live with his grandfather. And his grandfather told him, if you don't get good grades, if you don't do your homework, I'm going to go to class with you. And tell me what high school kid wants their grandfather to come to class with them and sit next to them. I don't think there's a single one that thinks that would be a good idea. But this friend of mine, he laid down the law. And he said, this is the rules. And if you don't perform, then I'm going to be there with you. And like many high school students and many teenagers will do, his grandson pushed him. He didn't perform well. And so guess what happened? Grandpa showed up to school and sat in class with the grandson.
Wow.
And that was his way of staying in touch with the school, staying in touch with the teacher, and supporting the good things that were going on in that school. And you know what? That young man turned his grades around. In just 2 years, he turned his grades around, and he received a scholarship to go wrestle for a college and got his college degree.
Wow.
And what a great success story that was.
Wow. So, going back to Weha and Fermea, do you remember those days were hot? And sand, we have the sandals. We always had to wait a little bit and get the sand out. But do you remember we always passed by the little elementary school between Weha and Fermea,
Yeah.
I have always been very interested in little school. I keep track of them. They have a Facebook page. And I thought, man, I would like to someday, if I have a lot of money and some other people, put a library in that school. That would be an amazing thing. And put a satellite there for them to access the internet and other things, you know. So
let's start a GoFundMe and see if we can do that. We'll need some help from some other people, but I think that would be an excellent goal to do. Those tiny schools, especially, in places like Tonga, Wiha, they're so remote and it's so difficult for them to get access to good educational material. But I like your idea of a satellite to get the internet, because everything is available there. There's so many resources. That would be great.
Yeah. I think that would be great to start something like that. And so if we can pause here for a commercial and have a song, then we'll proceed from there. Is that okay?
That sounds great.
Okay. Thank you.
Nukuhiva. Ikai, koe vai nonu ia e tau whangakui o katoa ia ono aho mono pōni, pe whakasai nisa ahono ngā hui, he eku winu ngō fua ahono anga, pia taha afe nimangi au ahono mamana, seuke, pia toi whakaatu I foki mohono kakala. He kohono ao ngā ko tāgi tahi, pia tāgi uta, no ngā ia suka, ngā koe toto, mo toto maolunga, saigi ai arthritis, kauti, pia moe kahi. Pia whakatau pasi ai mafte hua, ata mai, moe iwi lahi. Kai whanaahi ai mo uilelei he kohono tawi ia. He koe nonu, nai tori ami, Hawaii, Kahiti, Haamoa, pia mo Tonga, pia kuone mawhola I Europe, Asia, pia mo Amerika lahi. Koe nukuhiwa ia pia mo hono ngahi ao ngā, ka rewa, ke otaha o nukuhiwa, ki he ono walua, ni ma ono wha, fitu, nono ataha. Ono walua, ni ma ono wha, fitu, nono ataha.
Akau ko hota whanua, whakata pui, koe motu o tonga.
Ko iai halolo ia ko ngahui pia vilopi, pia mix mei parataisi. Ke whakatori a ngahi whakaamu whakasino mo ata mai. Ke miri pia ke whakasanisani mo masani mo whakamanifi. Pia ke foto aki ia ke hakatoa ngā aholahi. Pia ke toki ilo ai e mamani, koe loloni ia, koe tāpu aki mei langi. O ua, he he!
Ti e kulu pe o ku i lelenga o fofonga e neta e whaalaua Whatu mai ka te lau lotoa No ngā i e lotoni ho o toonga Ti e kupele pe i rea maia Ka e no ngā si i loto ho haa Mali mali mai mua ka te si inonga Lo i mata tulu ta mai ko e opa Ave asi o kuloto i ho fofonga Mama ni fonu he whaingata I kai malawa ke ukuma O sinona ene whaka ofo ofa I fonu moe moa aho u ofatu Mai kolo molo masi e ta anau Ka ia isi alea e tau Si i api kololoa ke i tuku moe lau Whakaamu Si e ku o whaniku o luatu E ku si o atu to o ahe manatu Langa mo huai si o kumafu Si ilo se ene tuku i he lilifa Si ilile ene matala i he terea Manongi mai a hono ea ene alaha Ongo mai pesi e te o whatau kakapa Amusi amu a e manupuna Okune kapapuna he langi launa Kau kumape o whakanonoa Whakaamunoa ke umata hosinona
Whamalo pito ho ki mo e haamata pule mo tū taiminga mo mea mai ke paenga e wā ke tarifulau. Pea hokatai peheni ai whepotano aki mo Trekata Thomas Halaki. Hiwa whaka ofa mo de hiwa Dr. Halaki.
Hiwa?
Yeah, hiwa whaka ofa.
You want me to sing?
No. Bebe how of kau. What's your thoughts on the song?
I love the Tongan music. I don't think I've heard a song that I don't like. So,
Oh, you are so kind there.
I often want to play some music, some Tongan music in my home, and my little Google Mini doesn't know that, so I have to go out and find my own music.
Okay. Some people ask me about what is the story, the people that listened to the Bomet Sisters last Saturday. What is the story about the feke? Do you want to share?
I told the sisters that you need to tell the story about the feke.
Man, I remember Palu, Matauvea's home. That's the thing they always fed us at those times, right by the ocean.
Yeah.
About the feke, and we ate
Fresh.
a lot of feke in there.
Yeah, it was fresh, good, yummy.
So, anyway, I like to. I wanna, if you can share the last point in there, because there are a lot of people that are wondering about that. If you don't mind sharing the last point or what parents can do. Thank you.
Yeah. So just to wrap up that section, the other points in that PowerPoint really are all related, and they are related to what I will refer to as burnout. Students face burnout. It's a real thing. Like I mentioned, they're under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress in life right now. There's a lot of things going on in kids' lives. And so the last suggestions on that group of list there really are about encouraging your students and helping them to find the right solution to their education. We've seen over the last couple of years through the pandemic, a lot of students that choose to take a gap year. And a gap year is when a student takes a break. And I think, that's okay. It's okay to do. But in doing that, I think it's important for parents to have a conversation with their student and identify a specific start point and a specific end point to that gap year, because it's so easy once you get out of school, whether you finish your degree or not, you just take this big sigh and say, oh, I'm done. I don't have to study anymore. Right? And you and I both know that that's not true. We continue through life and we have to continue learning. But I think it's okay for students, if it's planned well, go ahead and take a gap year, take a break, and don't rush yourself. Don't add that much pressure to yourself. Another thing to consider too is maybe you're in the wrong school. Sometimes I don't know how much of this is true in the Tongan community where there's so many first generation students, but sometimes at the university we see students come to a university because that's where their parents attended school, or maybe that's where an older brother or an older sister went to school. And so there's a lot of pressure put on each of the children to attend that same school. And sometimes that's not the right answer. I'm a believer that in vocational education, hands-on education, community colleges, technical schools, and in Utah, we're very blessed because along with the 8 universities in the state, there are also 8 other technical schools. And one of the things that's really nice about technical schools, and this leads into the next topic that I would like to discuss, which is financial aid and financial support. The technical schools in Utah allow high schoolers to enroll in their classes at no cost. And what they teach us a skill or a trade that a student can take into the workplace. Many times, that student can start that trade and work in that career field while they're going to school. So for instance, a lot of technical schools have a certified nurse assistant or a CNA program. And so a student can graduate from high school and be a licensed or a certified nurse's assistant. And then that allows them to start a career. They can start working in a hospital or another medical facility while they're going to school to become a nurse, for instance. There are many other programs. There are cybersecurity or information technology certifications. There are certifications in welding, in diesel mechanics, in many other programs like that, electricians, and so forth. So a student can start their career and use that as a springboard to go on into college if they choose, or maybe it's just a career that they want to continue to pursue, and that's a more comfortable fit for them. And that's okay. The other thing about those technical schools is that once you start a program, if you graduate from high school and you haven't finished the program at the technical college, many times they have scholarships that will provide 100% of the tuition cost in order to finish that certification.
Wow.
So that's a great option, I think, for many students to consider. So those are some of the other things that finish out that list about what parents can do to encourage their students and keep them from dropping out.
Okay, I have a question. So do you think that you and I taking 2 years to serve a mission for our church, is that considered a gap year?
I don't think that's quite the same as a gap year, although I think it's a great experience, whether it's a church mission or whether it's military service or maybe Peace Corps or any other thing like that, where you're serving other people and you're exposing yourself to other cultures, whether it's in the same country or a different country. The United States has different cultures in different parts of the country that are quite different. I've been blessed to live all over the country. I've lived in the Northeast, I've lived in the South, I've lived in the Intermountain West, I've lived in the Pacific Northwest, and I've lived in the Midwest, all parts of the country. And each region has a little bit different culture. And I think getting exposed to those is very, very valuable. Certainly exposing yourself to a different country, like I was able to do in Tonga.
Yeah.
Great blessing.
Okay, so when we left Uiha, I remember that we both went to Nuku'alofa, and I stayed there, and he went to Eua. What's the difference in Eua and Uiha if you remember any differences?
Oh, well, everything to me was so new in Tonga that I don't know that I saw as many nuances as maybe you would have seen in those. But one thing that I would point out, in Wiha, it was a very tiny island. There was just the two communities, Wiha and Felemea, and they were very tight communities. Everyone knew one another, and they sometimes they bonded very closely together, and sometimes they would find little minute differences in themselves that would keep them apart from one another. And in Ewa, a little bit larger, and several different communities there, and I saw a little bit of competition between the different villages. And when it came time for the big food parties, umus and so forth. That was fun for me because I got to participate in all that. But I think, I saw a little competition. Each village wanted to be better than the other village a little bit. And that was a little difference that I noticed between those two communities.
But that was good for you, right?
Yeah, it was very good for me. Everybody liked having the Palangi come and eat their food, and the Palangi liked eating their food. So it worked out really well for me.
So in your, I remember while we were having conversation a few years ago, you were out there in Kansas, and you told me that you always take Tongan food here to there in order to invite students, Polynesian, Samoan, or Tongan, or Hawaiian, to come eat, and you fix them dinner at home. What was that for, and why do you, as your role as professor, but also in the departments as well?
So what was the question there again?
Yeah, I mean, why do you want them to come and you fix food for them, and have them at your home? You always tells me about how much you enjoy that.
Yeah, I just enjoy people. I love being around people that are good and that are friendly. People from the friendly islands, they're good people. And, I cherish my time that I spent in Tonga. It was only 2 years of my life, not even a full 2 years of my life, but it had such a great impact on me. And I love sharing that experience with other people. And food is a way to share experiences and cultures. I started a few years ago after my father passed away. We do, my father, I think I mentioned he's an immigrant. He's from the Middle East. And after my father passed away, my wife and I started what we call the Middle East Feast. And once a year we cook Middle Eastern food, and we invite a bunch of friends over and share in that. And, we've done that with Tongan food as well. Food is it's one of the international languages, right? Everybody loves food.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a great way to share personal experiences and have good conversation with people.
Okay, so we have about 3 minutes left. I'll give you the 3 minutes to whether you want to change to another slide or whatever you want to share.
So I want to talk quickly about financial aid options. I talked a little bit about the scholarships that are available through technical colleges. There are many other scholarships that are available too, especially for first-generation college students. And so I want to make sure that I encourage those that go on to college to look for scholarships. If I had known how many scholarships were available, I would have applied for some when I was a student. I was very naive and had no idea what I could have gotten for financial aid. Scholarships do not need to be paid back. They are a free gift. Another free gift, there are government grants. Sometimes we call these Pell Grants. The Pell Grants are just one type of grant. There are many other kinds of grants that are available. And again, grants do not need to be paid back. So scholarships and grants are the two greatest ways to help financial aid for college students. And then the most common one is student loans. And of course, those do need to be paid back, but they're paid back at a low interest rate. And it's another good way to get financial aid through school. There are some other lesser known financial aid options. Work study jobs. Work study jobs are jobs on campus where you work and you study at the same time. So maybe you work as a receptionist and answer phones. And in between phone calls, you are able to do some studying, do some homework, or things like that. They're jobs that are designed to allow both working and studying at the same time, and you get paid for those. There's also aid for military families. So if a student has a parent or if they themselves have spent time in the military, there's a lot of financial aid that's available there. And there's also aid for international study. So if a student from the United States goes elsewhere, maybe to Australia or maybe back to Tonga or Fiji, there might be some financial aid there, or certainly for students who come from other countries here to the United States, there's also financial aid available that way. All of these types of financial aid require filling out what's called the FAFSA form. It's a financial aid form that the government has. You fill out that form, whether you're asking for student loans or whether you're asking for grants or scholarships. That's very important, and it can be kind of complicated. So I want to encourage students to contact the school, the university, or the college that they plan to attend. They'll all have a financial aid office, and those people are prepared. They have training that will help you fill out that form and get that submitted so that you're eligible to get some financial aid. There's so many good financial aid opportunities out there. I don't want to see anyone miss out on a great opportunity.
Yeah. Malo droa Dr. Halaki ofat kako per mo temi mo family.
Malo pito tatawa tu.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Halak. We are going to be doing a lot more of these, so thank you and have a good evening.
It's a good pleasure to be with you. Give my best to your family.
Thank you. I will.
Ofatu.
Yeah, ofatu. Ko ia ho eki pe mo e hamtapule mo ke tuka tuha ki fo I tu akhen pe ka heli ko ia pe tau mo tau fo hiva pe tau hikmele ke programa noko. Malo.
Siva mai taimi sama.
Hoi ki mo ka inga tonga I kale. O kuke fie mauna I hao ke ha moa o iloa ko ie vai pe ie ini. Awa. Ko ne pepe ini o kuni whakamahino mai ai au iki ai kieni. Pea koe mate lalanga seuke. Hange ia na lalanga ka misini kako eni. Koe si nima amo pe ia si ngai fae me ha amoa. O mao hene sais ke ingata pe I au kako lahi o kie. Tā mai lewa ke hoko pe toi putu. Pe whakatau hao kie ke laulo tahai ho foi pere I kare. Fika telefoni, valu noa valu, whāni mafitu ono whā hiva ono. Valu noa valu, whāni mafitu ono whā hiva ono. Koe Lotaki Enterprise here. Pisi, po mau e taki taunga utau he futeria ki e ta whanau me whakamapuna.
Matala ilo se, ko e retirement mahalo pe ko e reni pe hawhare ke tana whai.
E ho, pisi, pia whewhe le vai e kai mo inu. Whewhe ha taim ke taki e vai, whewhe e takawenga whawhamiri me whasiasi. Whewhe o ka ahowale pe ko talamai e toke tā, ko mao ko he kansa pe ko e mahaki mahu, pe e kai ke to e lava o ngā aue.
Whiunga matala ilo se ko inda fihi e whakaukau.
Whewhe o ka pau teke mate, os mao pe mea kotoa ke whako putu, mua konga mala e hoi a weho pisi teke poto a whe.
Ikai, koe mea ia koe teke mo ui, e ko matala ilo se.
Mani, koe whainga tari e nai o finisia e la via. Ka inga tonga, tā lewa ke whika telefoni hiva taha ono wha fitu taha walu fitua, pe koe fitu ni ma wha taha ua, walu noa ono. Tatawa I pepe koe hai tunga whamolele o ke iai, pe whaka immigration o ku ke iai, tā mai koe he kuma tā katoa maua oua. Io, te matokoni I koke ke o ngoi fie maalie, pe kai ka venga iga, a ho whanau I he ka au. Pe a whakawhei koe he polokalama whakatu amelie, ki hao taonga o tautau e futerie, I e taimi fitu ki he malu, e fiafi toko naki kotoa pe ele ti o wake tari whalau. Whakapapau I lewa, o whiunga a ho taonga o ke tau whetuku ki ai, I e futerie ma a ho whanau, mo e whanga makapuna. Fika telefoni, hiva taha ono wha fitu taha walu fitua, pe koe fitu nima, wha taha ua, walu noa ono.
Whamalo pita hoi ki mo e haamata ha mo tu taimi ka mo mea mai ki he paenga o he wāke tariwhalau. Ko e reo foki ia iloa o e tangata ko ia ko kepa mau pe neongo ku ne mamao atu ka o ke iongo na pe ni ngai whau pe mo e hiwa. Pea koe hui o ku ki tōmui si i mai e tōua koe ni ka ukare ilo i pe koe ne hau me halamanga ono pe koe hala koe ia e walu. Aia koe makaho walu e. Kai ke, to e tuku ataha ki fo i whasi e taha ka e whenga i mai e tōua koe ni ke ia o mai ki nukalofa. Malo.
kala ola me longo akau. Akenga oe manu tau akau, koe kakala onu kumaanu. Eki aki e wheinga kotone, aho whakasiu moro tere. Ongo mano ki hewe ewe e pau, oe ki e o taone. Vai teu, ai kau whewhine, e kuoruma ki la takowe. Pe i hua mai hatau a alo e tiana, oe maha a koro, tangaka e a piko makuho, katoka kala mei lo tunofo. Lalo di e teu oe pare alo, papa anga o manu matao. Lalo di e teu oe pare alo, papa anga o manu matao. Kau uru whanua aela a, pea hopo a uwhia morata, ke moutu e mo mawava, ai lau manu o tarikana. Kau uru whanua aela a, pea hopo a uwhia morata, ke moutu e mo mawava, ai lau manu o tarikana. Ka hoa ai nusi palataha, koe tui mei mata moana. Pe i hua mai hatau a alo e tiana, oe maha a koro, tangata e a piko makuho, katoka kala mei lo tunofo. Lalo ni e teu oe whare alo, papa anga o manu matao. Lalo ni e teu oe whare alo, papa anga o manu matao. Pe i hua mai hatau a alo e tiana, oe maha a koro, tangata e a piko makuho, katoka kala mei lo tunofo. Lalo ni e teu oe whare alo, papa anga o manu matao. Lalo ni e teu oe whare alo, papa anga o manu matao.
Whamalo pito ho eki moe haamata pule ho mu tuku taimi. Pea una ngalo sea te e tau polokama tuku ha whamalo ki a toki tātou masi halaki. Ko no hingoia ne uia ki i he misiona tonga. I he funga waka goia oku mau iai. Pea whakanau no pe ko toki tā halaki. Pea mau ai loto ofa ki a te ia ko e tangata fie tokoni ki he tonga. Pea ko e ngai mea nane vahe ko e sia fukia ai taha i kau professor ko ia me he Kansas State University. Pea toi hoko fuke ai tō taha ko e ni ko e tīnia o e communication ai au kau ki ai televisione. Pea mo e reti o i he university ko ia o Kansas. Pea ku ne neongo o ku ne hiki mai ki utani o ku kei whaibe ai whai a ko mo e ngai mea pehe ki he ngawe aki mahalo ai Teams, Zoom, pea mo ngahi u platform keke. Pea i he tānoa kotoa pe mo toko tahko ni o kone mao ai pe ai fia ko uhi ko taimi ko ina lava ke ma ngawe whakataha i uiha pea mo where mea. Pea ko i kauen ha pālangi o ko e pālangi kai wheke lahi tahain go sio ai. Pea ko manatu i he taimi ko ia ai mangawe ko ia i uiha mo where mea. Ko e neongo na i kai ke le rei ki a te ia, ko e manatu i whuku e a kakai e ko ne taimi ko unau kai e wheke u veri honau kiri. Pea kore pe hufanga I whakatapu. Kai pe ke tuka I tautahani, kai pe wheke, kai pe whai pe, kai ke te aha palo palema. Koe wheke ia, apiko ia o palu matau vea, I uiha hapai pe koe e na whanau, whakamogopuna, mai o whalahi ke teki mōtolu. Kai ke, tautari whia heni ai taua koe ni, pe me kake ilo I pe o kupau, pe me he halamanga ono, pe koe makahoa walu. Toanga pe a whainga wheitu. Atu, o kupau kuonga atu pe ke wharea mai ke mātanga, pa ke toki kamata e hiwa koia o polokama. Malo.
Malo pito. Afa.
Io, ai mai ke reo lahi mai,
Ai ke reo lahi. Whamalo, afa ka whainga maali, whakawha ki mai ke motuan. Whamalo atu ke ka inga, mo whamiri o kumau whanongo, mai he ngalu ea ka te ki maua. He ma, wawaku atu ka whainga tokoni, ma kore tokoni pe ka te ki mau tokoni mai ka te ki maua.
Koia. Ka taki pe taua ka te ai ke te ki reo lahiang pe ke kai pa ke ofiang e ki he maika, hui ke whanongo mai e mātanga. Pe koe polokalama tohi hoko whakien kauen he polokalama mahu inga, uhi ko sia ngahi ola le rei ki he whamiri, pe o koe whauki ngahi whamiri uka ki ai ha ngahi uta e nau whangatamai mo e whangakui, ka o ku whamalo ka teki moutou ne mō wanga ofa o mai ngahi uta ki he toa koe ni, koe kaure rei ai pia ki he whakakakato e tohi hoko ia e ne tamai, ka maafoki a e ne whae. Atu tuka te taimika koe, malo.
Whamalo a pito, toko ta whapalu, koe whainga maari o mai ke motuan, ke whaia he tala noa. Whakaamuange pe o ku wonga o lelea tika teki moutou he ngalu ea, ai si whakahoha o whakahoa ko he whiawhini. Pako ai te, kai te utoi whakahoa atu ka te moutou, ka te uhiwa atu ki fo hiwa pe, kono kamata anga pe ai ki tala noa whakaamu ke whakahoa ko he whiawhini. Pea ko he fo hiwa pe. Ke tau to panga moa, ki he tohi hoko, o kumi hakainga, na e mate fuoloa. Ke tau hanga o whai, hanga au e ki ai, ke whakamo ui ai, si o tau kainga. Tokua ho tolo I tai me tokua ho tolo I tai me ka ke kumi moa se o family he koe tai me se Io te ta ofa fe ki si o tau kainga o ka pau te ke lea kai te ke ala alo mo a ki a fonua o kumi o kainga na amate ai ka kai o kunau ilo ia Tokoa ho tolo I taimi Tokoa ho tolo I taimi Ka ke kome mo a se o family He koe taimi se Na e hau a ilai si Moi ki koia on ne whaki atu e Kia sia se whasamita Ke nā o malanga ake e ne fola ke whakamoe ai se kakai kua peki ai. Tōkua ho'otolo i taimi tōkua ho'otolo i taimi ka ke kumi mo asi o family he koe taimi si
Malo pito ki mo atu pea whamalo atu hau ki mo e hamata pule mo mea mai ki he polokama. O atu whakia pea me he substation ko ia ai paenga e wāke tariwhalau, aia o kui whakatene ko i PYU Provo substation. Kai ke, ko loto ke whawhoke taimi ki a atu ko i uhi, ko e hae ngahi mea nei lava ke whitu taki mai ai ka inga, mo ngahi u tā, mo ngahi u mea pehe whikau aki mo tohi hoko, o lava ke whakakato ai ha ngahi u mea nei kai ke kakato ai tohi hoko ki mua. Whoke taimi ka koe atu, malo.
O whakamalo au vito e af, koe whenga maari e koe ni. Koe tahani ha ngahi, koe kakai koe ni na te kei peke mo ui au sio ka teki nau tolu. Uraki koe siana ko kai anu anu. Pea ko kai anu anu, koe toko ai anu pere ko iki. Pea ko kai anu anu, na e kau i he toko ono, na nauhanga hapai mo tupo uraki ai whonua ki langi.
Koia.
Pa koia koe tahai ha, na te kei ki usio e tangata koe. Ka ko whamalo ko whangatua whawhine. Koe kau, koe whangatua whawhine koe ni koe nau tamai e nā tolu koe kau sia mani. Ka koe nau whae, koe mehe ki tāngai au i motuani. Pea koe ta polo kalama koe he hui ke ko sine nau mamatai. Pea ne nau hangai o posti mai ka au ai siana ko kai anuanu. E whahai e ku o e tangata i kia. Pea koe to e mea whakaofo e taha. Koe whiwhine, koe tahine, koe o whiwhine e ni o wahai. Koe whiwhine, pe koe tahine koe ni ko hono hingoa ko whaaki ki a lere. Pena te ke peke usio au he whiwhine koe ni. Ka nā usio he tā o whiwhine koe ni he kutupu hake ke sisi. I he apia o e tuonga ane o e kukui ko mere ana. Pa koe tunga ane koe e kuku a mere ana ko siana ko sione wha me i tau. Ko sione ko no hingoa whaka karistiane. Ka koe wha me i tau, koe tup mau ia me he tau koe ni i velata.
Koia.
Ko ia ai ne usio he ku keisi ia tau ai tā koe ni whaaki ki ālele i he api koe ni.
I uiha,
I uiha.
Koia.
Pea koe mena e ongo ke moi e motuani hange e whanau koe ni. Pea na e awei ala a heu, ko heu koe hoko i he whine eiki. O awe tā me olo ta ane. Koe api ia o whehi o si, koe api ko olo ta ane.
Koia.
O awe o ne tau i tā koe ni. Pea mālo loa heu, o kuia i ho tatu whiwhine ko ki tahine ko mona. Pa ko ia ena ne seni mai he interneti he mea koe ni ngalu ea. Koe taluange e kutupu koe kutoksi o ni ia whaaki alere. Koe taha ni hangai mea hongo. E neu whanongo he iai e ngahi li unioni ne whai i Salt Lake. Pea nā whanongo e he rea a tangata koe ni o kui kai ki a hahako ia. o whaaki ale. Pea kou whakamalo e awha ke te koe kono whakahoko e ni. Mahalo koe mea be me eiki ki whai. Pea kou ilo koe whekau e nia ka tau. He koe mea maho inga ki he motu ani. Ai mea koe hingoa. Koe hingoa o lava ke tālai aho to whamiri. Pea koe hingoa koe koloa mahu inga taha pe ia ki ha whamiri. I tonga. Ki ha whamiri ke nau whakahingoa aki ai nau whanau. Pea i longa ai wheitu o ku hao mi ai. Pea i longa ai whamiri o ku tupu mi ai. Pea ku hoko te waia koe toto. Koe mea ia o kou whakamalo lahi ai ki a te koe e awha koe whakahoko e mea ni. He koe ta whainga pē koe whakai ai ai whamiri. Ke nau whakahoko e tō ai tohi oko. Pea ku koe mea o whiel maulahi taha koe whai tō tangata e whā. Ai whamiri takta. Koe mea ia ka koe ta ka koe usio koe ni aku ki he mea e motu ani. Kua whai atu e tau tangata ia ki he taha whā pe koe taha ono e taimi. Ka koe ta whainga eni ki he hota whamiri mo ta kāinga o te kei ke nau ia nau tohi oko. Ke nau ai pia e tau tangata e whā. Koe mea ia o kuwhi e maulahi koe me i siasi. Ke whamiri ko toa pē ke nau. Ai e nau tau tangata e whā. Ke whakahu pea na kaku nau fie mao hono hoko atu. E toki hao lea vaia ka ki taua ke ta hoko atu ai ngai mea koia.
Koia, koe ko whipe, kone hingoaka katoa whukia ko whipe whaaki ānere. Pea na e iai hono hingoa whakatenetene ko tonga pongi. Koe ofe fine whukia o koe fōfua wahai whewhekaia ko Paula tui o ne toa. Pea kono ofe fine ia a whipe whaaki ālere. Pea alwhukia ki uiha pa mahalo kusi pehe ai pehe e kainga. Pea mi he lausi i na kei ki ai hano hako. Ka au tau kei mo uile rei pe koe hako ki tau tolu o tonga pongi. Pe ko whipe whaaki ālere. Pea o ku tanu whoki ai ulaki sirivia la tai tūlaki i he mala e goia koe ai a Paula tu i ane toa, a fuafua waha i whewhekāia. Kai ke ka koe ngahi whetu taki mai ai kāinga mo ngahi u tā o ku whakalata au pito koe uhi ke hoko ia koe konga e tau historia. Koe ai ho eki mo i haamata pūre koe hange koe hiwa koe ia atu. Tau alu kia ngai whetu ke taini mi ko hoko mai pe a Zoom, ko e Facebooka, mo ngai u platform ke a media, pe o lava pe o whai a ngai ngāwe lahi, kai ke te toi whamore paanga mo e taimi, hange ko e taimi ko e. O whai au takai holo ke mau a ngai u toi hoko he uku fuwhie mau au pito, ai ngahi toi hoko katoa pe, ai whamiri katoa pe, tatau e pe ko whea funga waka oku ke mea ai ka oku le rei, ke taimi kou whae ai ngahi family reunion, ke wahe ai ke lava o sio kia e tau whanau, whakamokapuna, whakamakapuna, ki he kakai, na nau tā ai whihi, ko tau tuurewa i ho nau ngahi u mā koe kau saia niti ki nau tolu o toi ki ma maoangi e tau sio. Kai whakawhukia te taimi ka koe atu. Malo.
Malo a pito. Ka i he lele koe ni he wikeni e unofo whakaukau awha. E ku sio ai ke ngahi ke whamiri mo nau ngahi hingoa. E nau hau ko whamiri ko toa peo tau e whae da whae mo whamiri o tangata. E o tangata iki. O ku hoko nau ngahi aho he mahina koe ni ko maasi.
Mari.
E oku mea ia ku whaka hofo ke he ku mo ui. Pea koe taha. Koe mea ia ku ongol taha ke he motuani. Koe ne whae. Na aku tupu ai. Pea koe whae ia nau hoko ia koe whae ka te au. Koe maari ia o tau ka no. Pea koe tau ka no. Koe mao be mo ia. Uhinga be ia me tau koe velaka. Koe uhinga koe lau ai mātua. Pea ne si mālolo ai whae koe ni. Ko ofa. Pea ko uloto au ke. O ko whakaamu mo e whaamiri ko tō pe henau. Honau pe te honau awe au ni. Ke huiwa e fo hiwa koe ni ko te etiketi ka nau tōru. Heilo na whakai ai ki nau tōru ke nau whaiha. Ai ngāo e koe ni o ta whakaanau ki ai.
Koia.
Ka koe fo hiwa ia ai tahini. Nai whau ia tahini koe Queen Charlotte. Koe fo hiwa na ne koe taitola ne fo hiwa. Koe ofa me bere haki.
Mala.
Ko loto pe ke hui fo hiwa koe ni. Ke dedicate ia ke family ko tō pe koko nau ao. Boki nau tolu ko tō pe. O utike ke tau whetau laki.
Koia. Malo opita.
Okay.
Hek bigger deal lah.
Lagi dah lah. Matangi ake, matangi hipo, o fe pakitu I haku loto. He si ale tafa, he si ale mo, hei lala anau mama o. Ne longoe alu pe oko tawa ke ni kuo siu mama o. I se isae e te whanomo he mahi e ta puka kuo ilo kuo no fo eni koe fe au be au o hange haka fo whanga I hetsi lea aeto I ke tali a mai e mapu hoi He lolo maa whala mohoko I he toke lau kuoli poi Vete kinai Kakalamano I koha ataia pasipori I se isae e te whanongo Mamahi e ta puka kuo ilo Kuo no fo eni koe Pe au Pe au o hange Haka fo Ne tu o tau ai whangata kua whai la e loni pe au. Tau mo ake he loto neia Fupou ono moe sia te folau Kau no fope o tataria Tu lau aki po si e te manaru He ise isae e te whanongo He mamahi e ta po ka kua ilo Kua no fo e ni koe Ve au Pe au o hange haka fo E se isae e te whanongo Mamahi e tapu ka kuo e lo Ko no fo e ni koe Fe au Pe au o hange haka fo
Malo. Whamalo o pito hoik mo e haamata puli ha mo tuk taimiga mo mea mai ki he painga o he wāke tariwhalau I he aha whakakoloni. Whamalo ki a ke mo atu ko e hiwa maari e pauhange ka te au toa ku ko ne ospe hiwa ko ni pea ko me pehea tu ki ke nofo ma upe I loto I whare loto ka ngalo te au ku ke o sto ki whare loto.
O iau, koe anga ia e tau takai. Ni ono pe, tau takai pe. Hange koe lau e motua, koe I motua ena mawhi tau laki. Ta tau ai pe ne ono e tau whenga ke tau maani ni. Ka he kai pe mawaha se tani ma te ki tau. He kono whatongia o na ia, kone hanga o ai ai mo teu I ki tau tau, ke tau hoko ko koura mo oni. Ki he taloni ko teu maa ki tau tau.
Oua, pia taimi ke mai tau whare ke tau whare ia ka se tane dai ni. Kai ke, koe ngahi ola le rei me polokama ko ia kua o si, ai ngahi ula I tā koe ni kua toa te mo ngahi uwhakamatala na ke pehe, na iai mo I kakaia ta koe ko whamiri tonu ko toki iloi ki nau tolu. Ka pau te ke wahe mai ai, malo.
Toko ua koe mo oni lahi e mea koe. Koe oku wongo au pito ke mo tuani. Ka kou whakamalo koe hui koe hau e teknolosia kuna ke lawe aini tau. Koe oku nau family ko ilo ngai family. Ka ku hange ko mole he kulotoe. E ku sio ke putolai pe a family. O tau I he ngalu ea, o tau whiloa ke he ngalu ea. Wako mea maho inga tahani. Nana aku whakaamu ke hoku ngai family. Ko ki mo tolu pe ko hoko mo pefitei mo tuku mai ke mea kau hiwa. Hiwa pefitei atoka ki mo tolu. Kau kuai no ketse mea koe ni. O mante ke aiko hoki tau tangata wha. Poka tau tangata pe ua. Ka matoki whakato kakato atu. Koe whakaanau e mo, koe maa mai peo, koe whakaai I mo tolu whamiri. Ke mo whakahau ka ngai ngā koe.
Koia. Oku whakawha ofa ngai ngau e peheni hange koe toki ilo ki mui ai taha ta whanga kui, siri peleto wheke, ko e hao whigia mi uvea pea ne nofo e tangata e ki i whalaleu, he ko whalaleu whoki ukai ko hingoa tonga, ko hingoa ia pea mi uvea, pea haua e tangata e ki he otu kine kina, o si maari ai pea mo e taha e ta whanga kui, pea toi whoki pe tangata e ki ia ki whalareu o si maalolo ki ai, pea oku tanu e tangata e ki whainhino whamui mui ia ho o whae, e ta whae ki au, ka toi taimi ku toa i ke lolo halai walu, pea manatu i ke o ki whalareu ki he apsiasi katolika, o ku ngahi malae ko ia o tanu e tangata e ki. Aia ko no hingoa ko silipereto wheke fulu hea, e tangata e ki. Ko tui e ai pe, ai taimi wawe mai pe, whai hato e whenga ki ai. Ko tui ko taimi ko ia e hofia e tempare ko ia i ne yafu wawa o ko taimi lere ia ke whai whasio ki he malae o e tangata e ki ko ni, he ko whanau ma upe hono hingoa fuoloa pe kai toi ngalo hono hingoa. Kai whokea te taimi ka koe.
Koe mahaloa vito, mahaloa vito. Koe tau mo a mau inga ia o whaia si whengani. Ko hipe koe te huf mo te ranga koe ni oe. O te mpale koe ni i wawau. He koe tāpua ki a mau inga ia. Toko me ia o si whenga mahalo iai. Wa te ukole he ni ko whanga tu whine i Sacramento. Ko ilo peo ko mo whanonga mai ka te au. Pea mo tu whine, maka whanga tu whine ku nau New Zealand. O ko ku kole ko o silo peo ko mo mamata mai kia te au. Ko whakatangi ko neu whai. Te mohanga o whakakakato. A tae kakato ai motuani. Ko iai o ko kore whakamato ate weni ka te moto. Pea kai te ulawe hingoa e ku moosi ilo i be e mautolu. Ko e whanau weni hoku ngai me tanga. Pea ko ia ko whakatangi a neongo. Ko e tu au ka te moto. Ko e motu ania ko e tofunanga i ka te moto. Ka ku whakamoange pe. Te mo tokoni mai. Mo ala ni mamai ke tau. O hau ko eni, ko e tau teu ke tau foki. Ki wawau ke teu koene. O e hofe tempare. Ka koe e mea mahuinga kuke o mai. Ko hoku toko ua. O gui tonga ia. Ko ki tama ko e whakahingoa ia mei. Pea ko ki tamai ki kone ko hovale lahi apito ko kau ia ke siasi. Ko whamili ko nina kai ke o kai ke nau mawahe me siasi. Pa hovale matala noa e weekend a neafi ma hawatu. O ku mawhetu utaki pe o ne tala mai e ia. Ko osi papi ia ke siasi mo na whamili. Ko e foha si itahaini o tangata ko talo lake pulivai. O ulahi a talo lake pa ie. Ie tangata iki. Pea ne matala noa ma o ne tala mai ka te au. Ko ia o kunilanga ai tempare.
Toatu.
Nā ne kau hano langa tempare i tonga. Ko no whakasani mea ko toa tempare. Ko ia o kune whakahoko nea. Pea nā mawhetangi. E ne tala mai ka te au. Ko ia eni o ku hiwa wau. He langa tempare. Hono whakasani mo mea ko to. Palovita. Ka uteke ke mawhi loa ke au me palovita. Ka hau koe mea ia hange koe lau pe, tau tōgui. O ku hau e mui o mo. Koe mea ia o kuongo taha ke motuani. E ene, o ne whanau ko nau. Ko nau kau ke siasi. Ka kou talang eni ka a talang. Talanga. O ku tali mai hepa mo anau. Ki hataha ia te ki mo tolu ke mo hanga sila i ki nau. Na aku whai pe ngawe. O ku māloloa o si malolo talo ke pe mo ana pe mo lo fa mo si daleki ako matu fefine fa muy en to malolo ate i ko ni mali watu ko te maleti le vai tai na fa hingo ai ke mau kui ko fefine ko te maleti le vai tai na mali te maleti le vai tai kia ik furi vai pa de to ki hoko atu ai ki hoko taki o ngai o family ko ni me le vai tai o guru nau toko la hea pito pe te ko ki mo tolu pe o whanonga mai ka te au he hoa koe ni ko whekau me ki motu ani neongo eni si i ka ke mo whai a toi hoko kia te maleti le vai tai pe mo iki na aku mana ula ke hu ko si he ta pola kalama na aku feilo aki pa mo maha o whakataha pa mo vai ska hema e wakapuna
Koia.
o ma tala no mai ai pa ne tala mai ka au e o alu ki stoleki ne alo te ke mapapi mai a iki e ongo matua a iki pe ongo matua a te maleti masi ko talange ke ka vai ko mo miniti pe ho a ke tao fai na ko ba ke ta mai ka wao kai ke no fa vino te wao ke tao fai ngao ko fa malo ka ke fitungo fulu ko ni ka vai an ene fa ka hoko ngai pa ko ni polo kalama mau kai ke ko ki ni no la gai
ko vaiska hema fuko elda vaiska hema ai ku ia ke ka fitungo fulu e si sukai se ka mani oni nga aki muini ka o koe ku manat me rie ki ho tamai pea ko whakafua ko ta u ono ki he fitu pea koe mantui foki na mau mo o ki mo tolu ia ulalahi pa manof pe maua i he sia ko veiongo e api ko ia o toketa sirifou palu pea koe whikau ai fine e ki ke uhao ki maketi o mai ai onioni te mata mo kāloti koe whai e ne ngahi sapasui. Pea koe hala koe ko wanga maheni koe ai hifo mai foki me sia ko veiongo hau i he ve e turiki koe a o e api Newcastle. O hau ai o afe mai ai o he palasi. Pea u ongo e au ia fuoloa a e lue koe ia. Kau lue mai au ia o hao mai i he fōsoa ko ia o e palasi. Masi, oho ware peo pehe mai e kau sotia, puke e motua. Pea koe whaike eke mai puke hae ku mea whaiutango ku aloi ku alu ki maketi. Pea ave atuau ki he mati whoki nae whare kau kaate. O fise kau kaate. Pa tamai nau tau ke tamahe motua e ta nofo heni. Ka kouti ko koe ata ngai fo i tae nima, pa tok tuange ke alu. Kai ke umana tu ipe na kamata e tangi he taimi ko ea pe i kai. Ka kou oho vare pe, ku awa e matapa na e tuku pe he ki loki pe. Ku hou mai e tangata e ki. Kai ke hoa ngā uia whātaonga i. Takau whātaonga e tangata e ki au. Me tamai na e whaaloan ki havelu ku ne ilo pe e ia au. Pea... Pehe mai rewa tangata e ki, ko hai koe ho hingoa pau tātou hingoa. Sai, koe foha koe o lata vai pa mu ahosi i, o ke pusiaki fo koe se ilala. Whewhe ho NT. Plata uk sai pe NT, na tamai, koe hae mea na hao ko pau whamatala kei tamai, tuku hau ki ta heka. Mā teo heka hene ki i hangiha ki i siipi. Hanga tonu ki tala mahu. Ta mai te utari heni alo whai ho whaatau, pao toi whok me pua heka ai mao mai me tangata e ki o tuk mai au. Ki he sia ko veiongo. Pao talangi ia ki a sei. Me ta mai sei io, ko musa ia. Ka ho tangata e ki ia. Ko e fofonga ofa o e tangata e ki he kai ke ngalo ia te au. He ko tuina mi tau whare i au he kau kaate e tui.
kai.
Hei, pake hoka te peho vahe, hau toi peha ta minite hongo full, malo.
Ko hanga pe ku ka manatu ki he. Ko whanau a tangata iki pe mo lewa i tai pe mo. O whiunga mo i toko tahato. Ko si taha ni ai tangata iki. Ka koe me uhinga i au ko ulawe ai ki a koe ni ke hingoa. Ko hingoa ka kato e tangata iki ko ria mi mai a liwake. Hau pia kui furi vai.
Koia.
Na i kai ki ha whanau i po ka tamasi a iki pa mo rewa i tai ko musa. Ko hingoa ko musa e whakatotolo koe ki ai kone ne alo tangata iki he tau ko honoua. Pea kono hingoa ko ne whoki hao koe alo moia ki ai ne whoki mai ko ia o kui a ki pe viliami musa. Pea koe ne koe whakatotolo pēni ai motu ani pe koe haa no uhinga e musa. I he lea whakahepe lū. Koe musa ko uhinga ia koe taki mua.
Koia.
Pea ko no whae o Filipo koe, nai hanga whewhe ni hanga ka kehe koe ni hanga ia ni alu he whakatamaiki o mauai a hingoa koe ni koe musa. Pea ku ui a ke ai pe ia o au mai he ni malolo. Pea ku alo a ke ni mau hako moe whana o ku nau ui pe ke tangata iki, kia musa. Ui pe kakato hingoa ko vria mi musa, pai ui pe ko musa. Ko ui ko nau, ko ui pa siana na hange ku nau pe he ko toa. Ko hingoa ko taki mua pe koe, ko tangata na toa ko ui ko ni alu he tau.
Koia.
Ka taki mua ka ki lawe no ke mea kona na ke hao alu koe ke kolosi ke whare tu. Ke whare episodia, kaukate. Ko mea ni he tahiwa o no wai. Ko maha ko tau taha wai. Whenga tangata iki ke ne awe au, ke walo huu ke sotia. Pea koe pong ie ne taha ne whai e nau laka ma nau whakamalo kau kaate i pangai. Pea koe osi koe nau whakamalo sina pe koe nau laka o ko nā malewa teu vete, ko teu ke foki ki whaamotu ki malai wakapuna ke mitari ai.
Koia.
Ko mea koe ni ku mi hoko e fitu. Ko fitu pong ien. Ko uhinga e kutala noa ki he ni. E awha. O ku whakahawe mai e tamatui. Atu pouwha. Masi o haupi koe huage ke whare kaate. Ko malanga kau maalunga. Na ya siana ko maasi. Siana ko taki maalunga ni maalunga. Mo tangata ikiu. Ko te manatu ipe hingoa tangata ikin pa te utoke ai. Nau malanga ki olunga. O ku pe folo tome folo atamatu ipe mai. Folo gila. Ko mien panongo ki ai i he pong koe ni. Ko folo net. Hono uhinga ene ave ene whanau. Kato katoa ene whanau mo whanau hono te hin a tūpere hake. O nau o katoa pe o soti. Pako ne pehe mai befo i mea koe ni. He ia i pe aho ia e liu kapa. Soko mea aini he kuonga, he honongo fultupui. Se pako hoko koni koe fo i, ai mea koni i nuku alo whaama nea.
Koia.
Wo ake e kumanatu ki he lea tō wholofola e atu pou whae. O koke ilo awha. Pa te ulea ki pēr mea koe ni. He koe taimi koe ni, o kou nofo i, o ku hange e manilala pa mo fifita. O hange au ia hana foha lahi, o ku keisisi a sefo mo soani.
Koia. Ko kei manatu.
Koia, ko hange au, hange hataha lahi, mo e tama ko nā sio, ne hau mi toko mororo unga, ko hange au ia ko hafoha lahi o kinau. Ko uhinga e kutala no, kene koe mea koe na ulisi ko toa pe mo, o wale pe kuta mai he, mo tua India, ke alo ave tau mafa ki loto a. Koe kare
kosi.
Koia mo uo, he? E afa. Koe mea ko toa i ko alo ave ki. Pe o a weni ke na ulisi whaka mui, ko whiunga mo tau he ono noa. Ko a weni ko alo ave mea ki, e whakafo ai na ulisi e kau mea. Ka koe huinga e kutala noa koe ni. He foi hao e kakai koe ni o tutuan muku alofa. E loi ka pana o kuitonga he taimi koe ni. Na e au haka atoa e foi kakai koe ni na nau tutuan muku alofa.
Oua.
Pa te ure a kia he ku mamahi au. E hui he kua api aloto nuku alofa hala tau fa. E koe na ngai kai fu mea whana ia e tangata iki. Koe mea e meso, koe mea ka pana au, maha koe mea peke e iki ki na ke whao ki morin. He ka pana e hau koe mea koe ni koe, e au hai fwoi kakai koe ni loto ko aina na oma tutu e au hai. Pa koe hanga pe ia ki whakahua.
Koia. Toi beta mini te ua pia ose ta taimi, ka ke whaiata whamalo, beta
ngai whamiri, whangatokoua, ko whakamalo atu ko mou mea mai. Pa ko whakaamo ange pē, e whakaanaua, ango ki mātua ni te mou wala nima mai, ke tau nima taha, he tau toto, i he mea koe ni. Pa koe ia e whakamalo maalunga, pa whakaamo ange pē, e hoko atu ko mai, tokoni, whamiri,
Whamalo pito ho eki mo e ham kāpule ho mo tuku taimi ka mo mea mai ki he paenga o e wāke tariwhalau i he aha whakakoloa koe ni. Koe lawa ia o he polokalama o whai atu me he PYU Provo Substation ko ia a he paenga o e wāke tariwhalau. Whawhi atu ki mo tolu ko e osi e polokalama koe ni ke mo mea atu ki he main station ko ia a he paenga me San Francisco, California. Pea ka hiri ai hoa tolu ko ia e whoki atu ai polokalama ki Honolulu, Hawaii. Pea e waweni mai pe ai taimi e whotu ai substation ko ia o Nuku'alofa Tonga. Pea i hene pehe, ko e lava ko ia ai polokalama ko ia me substation ko ia e Nuku'alofa Tonga. Pea ko ene lava ia ai hoa ua wha ai whaifatongia e paenga e wāke taliwhalau maau. O whamiri, ka inga, whamau puna kau mawho ke ngai whangawaka o toa pe o ku mea ai. O ku mawongo i whanu tāpua ki he taimi o toa pe o ku mau heni ke whai ha polokama maa ki mau tolu. Pea whamalo si o mau mea mai mohono wahe wahe e tau polokama. I he fiafi whakakoa koe ni. O toki mea mai ia ki he polokama whikau aki pia moe tohi hoko mono mahu inga e tohi hoko kauhi koe lahi e ngai mea ke whakafonu i he whamiri tatau pe i he whamiri whae atu kau mawhoki e whamiri o ene tamai me he hala mangaono kau mawhoki ai hala e walu koe hala e walu ho eiki mai haamata pure koe hala ia au tuu i he makaho walu o whalahi atu ki a mō ngahi whawhonga. Ia mālo ai tūtaimi ki mō mea mai ki he pāenga. Ka koe lawa ia o e polokalama me he substation koe ni. Ka mō mea